So in the past 24 hours, they released this video of the Palestinian resistance fighters targeting the Israeli soldiers in Khan Yunis. That was on the 26th of July, on Saturday. Khan Yunis, where Israel buried, and this is the actual video, its own APCs after the Palestinians targeted them. 3 APCs that were targeting them, that were targeted by the Palestinian resistance, one of them with an explosive device that a Palestinian fighter would have to go directly and plant or put into the APC, and some of them with a Yasin 105 RPG that is a symbol now, and that's a nightmare for Israel and the genocide forces inside of the Gaza Strip. And the Palestinian resistance, again, monitoring all of the actions. These are the cameras of the Palestinian resistance, monitoring the exact movement of the genocide vehicles inside of the Gaza Strip. And this was one of the attacks where one of the Palestinian fighters will hold an explosive device and go and plant it in an APC. Have a look at this. This is not the first time, and this is where the bulldozers of Israel start to bury the APCs. And the Palestinian resistance said that at the time they did not see them evacuating anyone unless that was missed. But they had them targeted, and then they buried them inside of the Gaza Strip, and they did not take them out unless they were completely burnt again, like what happened before. And Netanyahu didn't want to face further scrutiny, so they said, we'll tell their families that, you know, all of them were totally fried, and they'll give them back ashes or something. What we have seen now, by the way, when the Palestinian resistance fighter going there and planting this device, this is happening on a regular basis. This is a prime example of why Israel will never win and why the Palestinian resistance will never be beaten. Because these people are putting their life on the line directly when they're going to fight these genocidal maniacs. Plus, Israel, in what it calls the Gideon chariots or Gideon's chariots in this recent campaign, they put in all of the forces that they can put inside of the Gaza Strip with 5 divisions. They didn't disclose the numbers of the Israeli soldiers that went into Gaza within those 5 divisions, because in the initial days, the peak number reached over 80,000. Again, Israel never verifies, but you can only assume based on the estimation of the size of each division. The division is the largest unit in an army. Then you have the brigade, and then, the smaller units that come. But Israel had 5 divisions. They declared that they withdrew 2 brigades from Khan Yunis not long ago as part of Division 98. But all in all, in Gideon's chariots, they were planning to have an all-out military campaign just to finish everything off militarily, so they don't have to talk with the Palestinian resistance and not have to have any sort of deal with the Palestinian resistance. So an attempt of the early days where they tried to use, full force. The only difference this time is that they had repeated intense attacks, and the Palestinian resistance hardly suffered any casualties. And that's being confirmed by Israel. The resigned Major General Itzhak Briki had a podcast the other day in which he stated that the Palestinian resistance fighters are not losing any of their personnel. As a matter of fact, they reached the initial numbers that they were in, and they grew even more. There's a likelihood that they grew even more because they're conducting a guerrilla warfare against Israel. And guerrilla warfare defeated the United States in Vietnam, and it defeated the Soviets and the Americans in Afghanistan. Just in these examples, and there are many other examples too. Therefore, Israel would never be able to win a guerrilla warfare against the Palestinian resistance. Now, key elements within the military establishment know that very well. That's why they've been constantly advising Benjamin Netanyahu to reach a ceasefire deal, especially the IDF Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir. Although he was under a lot of pressure to try and get something out of this campaign that the political echelon led by Netanyahu is imposing on him, and his ministers bossing him around. Like Smotrich and Ben Gvir in cabinet meetings were always digging and always saying negative words to him. You know, you're a failure, you're not failing, you're not achieving your objectives, you're not doing as you're told, you're incapable. Like what they've done with the previous IDF Chief of Staff. Yet despite that, he has shown many times that we need to reach a ceasefire, because he was the first person to go head on with Benjamin Netanyahu by saying that the priority is to get back the Israeli prisoners of war rather than defeat the Hamas. Whereas Netanyahu always stated, our priority is to defeat Hamas and then bring the Israeli prisoners of war, only for Netanyahu later on to take a step back. So now that the Israeli Knesset is on a break, we have these humanitarian pauses. No aid that's going into the Gaza Strip is sufficient enough, so don't be fooled by that. And don't be fooled by the whitewashing attempts of European establishments trying to protect themselves first and foremost, and then Israel, and hide their shameful complicity and participation in the genocide. But despite all of that, there are certain moves that are leading Benjamin Netanyahu to concede. Israel already confirmed that they're having concessions, whether it's in the ceasefire, whether it's inside of Gaza. Everything is clear to everyone who's monitoring the situation. Therefore, that would put the American administration and the European establishments that support Israel in a position where they will still be supporting Israel, because they don't have a problem with the concept of a supremacist ethno-state. Forget about all of the talk of democracy and human rights. They support an ethno-state, an apartheid entity built, formed, and continues to survive through genocide and terrorism and ethnic cleansing. They don't have a problem with that. But what they do want is for Benjamin Netanyahu to reach a deal, to have a de-escalation, and preserve this ethno-state for the future. So that no sort of revival would happen, no sort of people-led movement would happen, any real democratic change or freedom and equality between the Jordan River to the sea happens in that area, because that would hurt their geopolitical interests in the region. They don't want any country there to be a country that is independent, representing the people. No, they would rather have an ethno-state and dictatorships in the region. That's why they constantly support them. With that, with every hour, in the past couple of days especially, there are new moves that are coming that are showing that there is indeed a movement there in relation to the attempts to de-escalate, Netanyahu's concessions, the fact that people are upset with him in the Israeli cabinet, and the fact that Israel is declaring these humanitarian pauses and allowing aid in, no matter how little, without any return. Hamas isn't conceding with anything, by the way. Hamas showing leniency and flexibility, but they haven't given Israel anything in return. to what they're doing now. Therefore, that shows you that there would be a potential, and the latest events and the events that will unfold in the next 48 to 72 hours will also give us more clear indications on the following weeks and whether there would be a genuine potential for a temporary deal to take place, or if it will continue down the same path of more escalation and things going out of control to maybe higher levels than ever before.